Good morning, everyone. Do we see General Vannacci yet?
Unless he's a rainbow.
I think I see him in there.
All right.
Oh, yeah, there he is.
Good morning, everyone. Today we are joined from Baghdad, Iraq by Brigadier General Roberto Vannacci. General Vannacci is the Deputy Commanding General for Training in Iraq. General Vannacci, how do you hear us, sir?
I hear you loud and clear.
That's great. All right, sir, over to you for opening remarks.
Thank you very much and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I will be talking about the coalition's effort to train and equip the Iraqi security forces to enhance their capability to ensure the lasting defeat of ISIS and to set the condition for follow-on stabilization efforts. To date, more than 150,000 Iraqi security forces have been trained across multiple locations in Iraq. The training provided to these personnel addressed the full spectrum of Iraq's security requirements, not only to locate, identify, and destroy the last remnant of ISIS in Iraq, but also to provide long-term security for all Iraqis. In Taji, Besmaya, and in the Kurdish region, more than 98,000 army, Kurdish, and tribal forces have been trained in basic combat skills. Additional skills trained at this location include the demining operations and combat lifesaver training, of which the coalition has already trained more than 36,000 personnel. In western Baghdad, more than 25,000 police and border guard personnel have been trained in law enforcement and border security procedures. Finally, more than 18,000 counter-terrorism forces have been trained in the skills necessary to defeat the last remnant of ISIS and to identify and pursue rising threats to the Iraqi stability. The coalition also trains and equips the Iraqi Air Force, providing flight training to its pilots, maintenance support for its fleet, and divestment of planes and equipment. The coalition's goal is to develop an air force that is capable of sustaining its missions, from providing training to its flight personnel to providing maintenance to its own planes. The training that the coalition provides to the Iraqi security forces is truly a multinational effort, with various nations taking the lead on training in different locations. Australian forces in Taji and Spanish forces in Besmaya are training ground troops. In the Kurdish region and in western Baghdad, Italian personnel are training army and police forces. Also, German forces are providing training in the Kurdish region, while Danish forces are leading the training in Al-Assad Air Base. The coalition recognizes that enhancing the capability of Iraqi security forces in order to prevent the rise of terror groups such as ISIS is an international responsibility. Therefore, the coalition's training effort is reflective of that global responsibility. In addition to enhancing the capability of the Iraqi security forces through training, the coalition also equips them through the transfer of equipment worth more than $2 billion. Just as the training the coalition provides ensures that the Iraqi security forces are capable of providing for Iraq's complex security requirements, so does the coalition aim to provide the Iraqis the equipment they need to meet the demands of their operations. 17 Iraqi army brigades have been provided with initial equipment sets, including personnel equipment, small arms, ammunition, around 1,000 non-tactical vehicles and over 1,100 armored vehicles, including high-mobility multi-purpose wheeled vehicles, mine-resistant and bush-protected vehicle, and Iraqi light armored vehicle Badgers. Physical security operations across Iraq are being assisted by the coalition's provision of additional equipment to around 20 federal police and border guard force brigades, including provisioning more than 180 prefabricated border guard and police presence infrastructure since the beginning of 2018. Additionally, over 400 explosive detection and demining kits have been provided to the Iraqi security forces this year to assist in the detection and removal of improvised explosive devices and explosive remnants of war. The transfer of equipment to the Iraqi security forces, coupled with the training that the coalition provides, guarantees that the Iraqi have exactly what they need to defeat ISIS and to put into place the conditions necessary to prevent terrorism and radicalization to occur again. By all measures, the Iraqi security forces have already proven that they are more than ready and capable of securing their country. On May the 12th, Iraq's first national elections since the rise of ISIS were held peacefully, despite repeated warnings from ISIS of their intent to use violence to discourage Iraqis from voting. This is mostly thanks to the training and preparations conducted by Iraqi security forces to ensure that all Iraqis were able to exercise their right to vote free from fear of harm. The Iraqi security forces have also proven their worth as a valuable member of the coalition by conducting strikes in Syria, targeting ISIS activity designed to export violence elsewhere. Additionally, Iraqi ground forces have been instrumental in assisting the Syrian Democratic Forces in the Euphrates River Valley by sealing their borders and preventing ISIS terrorists from filling the battlefields. Finally, the Iraqi security forces are conducting operations and strikes in Iraq on a daily basis, aggressively degrading ISIS' ability to launch attacks by locating, identifying, and destroying their remnants in the country. Their hard-fought victories in Ramadi, Mosul, and Tal Afar prove that the Iraqi security forces have always been capable of fighting for the freedom of all Iraqis. The coalition's goal is simply to make a good force better and to enhance the capability of the Iraqi security forces to ensure Iraq's lasting peace and security. By all measures, they are well on their way. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will now take your questions.
Great. We'll start with Sylvie Lantum from AFP.
Hello, sir. Thank you for doing that. Did you notice any change in the relations with the Iraqi security forces since the result of the elections? Knowing that Sadr won this election and some of the Western troops fought against him during the war?
Well, I've heard the questions not so well. What I've understood is that if there is any difference from the election that were held on the 12th of May to the behavior of the forces on the field. What I can tell you is that the elections that were held here, the last 12th of May, were the safest election ever held in Iraq in the last 5 years. And this is thanks to the Iraqi security forces that were providing the security on the cities, on the fields, and wherever the elections were held. The results of the elections are the results of a democratic country and are the results of the Iraqi people. And I don't think that the results of the election will make a difference on the Iraqi security forces, as long as we will continue together to fight ISIS and to stabilize this country.
Did you notice any change in the mood of the troops?
No, I haven't noticed any change of the mood of the troops and any change on the activities that we are conducting together with the Iraqi security forces in the training camps and in the training bases. They have continued to train, and I can tell you that even now that is the Ramadan, they are continuing to train without any rest.
Next, we'll go to Wyatt Goolsbee with EWTN.
Thank you very much. General, thanks for doing this. I want to ask you about Iran, because we hear so much about Iranian influence in Iraq, their support for militants, terrorist groups. How much of a threat does Iran pose for Iraqi security forces, and what are Iraqi security forces do to counter Iranian presence in Iraq?
Okay, I have always some problems on hearing your questions. What I've heard is that what the kind of training that we are providing to the Iraqi security forces for counter-terrorist tasks. And I can tell you that we are training the Iraqi security forces in counter-terrorist tasks. We are training the counter-terrorist service and other forces that are providing these capabilities. They are specifically equipped, trained, organized forces that are they have been conducting counter-terrorist tasks in the last months and years. And we rely on their operational capability. And this training is going on in these days and will continue to go on as long as it is necessary. I hope I've answered your question.
I'm sorry that you couldn't hear it properly, General. What I was asking about was specifically Iran, Iraq's neighbor. Iran has continued to support terrorist group militants in the region. My specific question was about, is there anything specifically that the Iraqi security forces or the military is doing to counter Iranian influence?
Yeah. Okay, now I got it better. So I don't have any figure about that. Our task is to defeat ISIS and to fight against ISIS. We don't have as a coalition any other task in this country. And we are continuing to perform this task with the Iraqi security forces on a daily basis. So I cannot answer to the question you asked me because I don't have any information about that.
Now to Lori Milroy with Kurdistan 24.
Thank you, sir, very much for doing this, and I'll try and speak in a way that you can hear me. You mentioned the Italian and German training of forces in the Kurdistan region. Can you provide any more details? That's Peshmerga as well as police? Does it include reforms like the unifying of Peshmerga forces?
I can tell you that there are numbers of nations involved in the training, and all the coalition forces are providing training around Iraq that include the Kurdish region. And we are providing this training to the forces that are controlled by the central government, which include the Peshmerga. As you know, there is a training structure in Kurdistan, the Kurdish Training Coordination Center, that is providing specific training to the Peshmerga forces and to the Ministry of Interior forces that are dislocated in the Kurdish region. The training we are providing encompasses all the operational capability that are needed to counter ISIS, to protect the country, to protect the population, and to conduct operations against this enemy. So without no discrimination of forces, whether they are from the Ministry of Interior or the Ministry of Peshmerga, they are all part of the Iraq security forces, and numbers of nations are providing training to them, as we do here in Baghdad or in the other training bases spread inside Iraq.
Do your efforts in the Kurdistan region include the effort to promote reforms like unifying the Peshmerga forces?
Well, unifying the Peshmerga forces is not a military task. What I can tell you is that we are providing the training to all the militaries that are in Kurdistan. Unifying Peshmerga forces is a political issue, and I can tell you that this issue, this problem, if I have to see how the military behaves, I can candidly say that they are in the lead for fixing this problem in the future.
One follow-up.
Another question to follow up on Iran. Yesterday, Secretary of State Pompeo, in a major speech, said that Iran needs to respect, quote, the sovereignty of the Iraqi government and permit the disarming, demobilization, and reintegration of Shia militias. Those militias were formally incorporated into the Iraqi security forces. Does Secretary Pompeo's position, as he laid it out yesterday, affect your training mission?
Well, you know, about what you say, this is a policy problem. What I can tell you is that the PMF are an integral part of the Iraqi security forces. They have been fighting against ISIS, and they have liberated part of the Iraqi territory from ISIS. So we are acting along some of these PMF and alongside the Iraqi security forces, as long as they will continue to combat against ISIS and to be centrally controlled by the Iraqi government.
That you will not work with, is that correct?
Can you repeat, please?
There are some, if I understood you correctly, there are some PMF that you will not work with because they're too close to Iran?
Well, what I can say is that the PMF that are working along us and along the coalition are fighting against ISIS and are working with the Iraqi security forces day by day, and they are centrally controlled by the Iraqi government. This is what I know about the PMF we are working with.
Next to Jeff Shogel with Task and Purpose.
Thank you, General. Now that Muqtada al-Sadr's bloc has won the election, are you preparing to leave Iraq?
This is a very good question, but I don't have the answer because, as you know, we are here by the request of the Iraqi government. And regardless of who won the election, I think that if this request will continue to be addressed to the coalition will remain. As you know, we are military and we don't make this kind of decision. These are political decisions. So I think that whenever we will be told by the Iraqi governments that we will have to leave, the politicians of our nation will take the right decision.
Thank you.
Next to Qasim Ilari with Anadolu News Agency.
General, thanks for doing this. You said despite ISIS threat, people went to polls in Iraq peacefully, and you characterized the election as one of the safest elections since years. So the turnout of the election was 44%, so which is record low in Iraq. Can you rule out that the threats of ISIS caused this record low turnout?
Well, I cannot say that. I can just tell you that the security in Iraq was almost perfect, and the Iraqi security forces were recognized by all the Iraqi politicians and by all the Iraqi internal actors to have been providing the right safety and the right security for their country. The number of electors that went to the poll is a social and political problem, and we cannot say that it was a consequence of the ISIS threat.
Thank you.
Next to Jeff Selden with Voice of America.
Thank you very much for doing this. Wondering if coalition forces were to pull out soon. You talked about how capable the Iraqi forces are now, but are the improvements in the Iraqi forces sustainable? If the coalition was not there anymore, would the cultural changes that have been made last? So should a group like ISIS rise again, the world would not see the Iraqi military fall apart? And I have one other follow-up question.
Well, thank you for your question. What I can tell you is that we are growing up a professional, self-contained, and self-sustainable force. And the Iraqi have demonstrated us that they are in the right way to achieve this end state. What will happen to the future resides on the end of the Iraqis. And the coalition will continue to support them as long as they need and as long as we are requested to do so.
And the second question, what type of training are you doing for the forces inside Iraq to recognize and then deal with small ISIS cells, sleeper cells, terrorists? And how are you training the forces to track these bad actors? And what are they being entered into databases? What type of training is going on there?
Thank you for these questions. And the answer will be quite comprehensive because, as you know, there is the training that we are providing to all the forces is in a certain way contributing to avoid that ISIS cell are spread in the country. Also, the conventional training that we are providing to the forces is something that will take the territory out of these cells and gain the support of the population that is in some way, that could in some way provide the hide to these cells. And then we have got a very specific and targeted training that we are delivering to some specific forces and specifically to the counter-terrorist forces to find, locate, and neutralize the cells and the remnants of ISIS. There is a big intelligence endeavor and effort in that. This is, as you know, all these operations are normally intelligence-led, and the forces that we are providing the specific training and specifically organized, trained, and equipped to conduct these very discriminated and targeted operations.
James Garamone, Defense Media Activity.
Grazie, General. You said in your introduction that Iraqi forces had launched attacks into Syria against ISIS and that the Iraqi forces were aiding the SDF. How specifically are they doing that?
Well, you know, I'm responsible for training, but I can tell you something about what the Iraqi security forces have done in the last period in Syria and in support of the SDF. They conducted some very precise airstrike inside Syrian territory. They sealed the border with Syria with very highly trained border guards, and they deployed their guns, their artillery battery along the border to contrast, to react against ISIS that is located in some pockets close to the border with Syria. And they supported, though, the Syrian Democratic Forces that are gaining terrain, they are subtracting the terrain from ISIS, and they are kinetically targeting ISIS in those pockets.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any more questions for General Vannacci? All right, sir, we are at the end of our queue here. Do you have any closing words for the group?
No, thank you very much for your attention and for your questions.
Thank you very much, sir, and have a safe deployment.
You too. Thank you very much to all of you.